Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another special committee meeting of the Malden School Committee. So today is Monday, March 15, 2021. The time is 6:00 p.m. In accordance with Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 18, as well as the Governor's August 23rd and December 8th, 2020 revised guidance prohibiting assemblage of more than 25 people, this meeting will be conducted via remote participation. In-person attendance by members of the public is prohibited, but all effort will be made to permit public attendance of this meeting via remote access by internet, telephone, and via public broadcast of the meeting by Urban Media Arts, formerly known as MATV, on all public access television channels. Public access will also be provided by posting draft minutes and/or transcript recording a record of the meeting on the City of Malden website at cityofmalden.org as soon as practicable after the meeting. So what we are going to do next, as we always do, is take a moment to pledge allegiance to our flag. We'll then hold a moment of silence for all those who have fought for our country and continue to do so throughout the world today. We will then have the clerk call the roll to ensure that we have a quorum sufficient to get together this evening to conduct business. And then we will get into this evening's agenda, which primarily is around the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education waiver to return to school on April 5th, as well as a potential conclusion to the superintendent search process. Well, as always, we have Rosetta Languages here tonight to provide translation, and I've been able to get to know them so well over the past couple of weeks. I don't know what I'm going to do without them, so they may be here permanently going forward, Danielle. So we're going to get to him in a minute, Mr. Weldy, or should we have him now? Or should we do that just before we start the agenda?
Maybe just before the agenda.
Okay, so why don't we first pledge allegiance to our flag. I'd ask everyone to please rise and salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
for which it
stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing for a moment of silence in honor of all those who have fought for our country and continue to do so today. Thank you. We'll now have our clerk call the roll.
Mayor Christensen?
Here.
Mr. Drummy?
Here.
Mr. Froyo?
Yeah.
Mr. Gray?
Here.
Mr. Ivino?
Yeah.
Ms. Luong?
Here.
Mr. McCarthy?
Here.
Ms. Spatafora?
Here.
Mr. Weldy?
Here.
Superintendent O'Terry?
Here.
All right, so we have a quorum sufficient to meet this evening. Now let's turn it over to Danielle to talk about how we're going to conduct this evening's meeting via translation.
Thank you, Mayor Gary. Good evening, everyone. We're very happy to be here again with the team from Rosetta Languages. I will introduce in each language how to get onto the language channels. English speakers, hold tight for a moment and we will be back to you in a moment. I'll start with Arabic. السلام عليكم، مساء الخير. عندنا ترجمة باللغة العربية. اضغط على رمز الكرة الأرضية واختر اللغة العربية. إذا كنت على هاتف محمول فعليك الضغوط على 3 نقط ثم اختيار الترجمة ثم اختيار اللغة العربية ثم تم. إذا كان لديكم أسئلة يمكنكم الكتابة في الدردشة. شكرا جزيلا. And I will pass it on to Spanish.
Buenas noches a todo el mundo. Hoy tenemos interpretación en español para la reunión. Entonces, cuando se enciende la función, usted vería un globo en la parte de abajo de su pantalla. Puede presionar ahí y seleccionar Spanish. Si se está conectando por celular, puede empujar a los 3 puntitos y ahí escoger interpretación y Spanish y después done. Muchas gracias por su asistencia y now I'm going to pass it to Portuguese.
Boa noite, todo mundo. A gente está tendo interpretação esta noite via Zoom, então se gostaria de escutar a interpretação em português, a gente vai ligar essa função daqui a pouco. Então, quando a gente ligar, é só ir abaixo. Se tiver no computador, vai clicar no globinho e vai escolher português. Se tiver no celular, vai clicar nos 3 pontinhos onde fala mais, vai escolher interpretação e depois escolher português. Now, Haitian Creole.
Bonsoir tout le monde, non, moi c'est Smiline et moi pour interpréter en créole haïtien pour vous. Une fois nous activer l'interprétation, ou me cliquer sur l'icône globe là. Là que vous fini pour être capable d'entendre créole là. Là que vous fini, si vous sur un téléphone, cliquez sur 3 petits points et puis cliquez Link Interpretation ou appelez en anglais. Le fini, cliquez Haitian Creole qui c'est créole haïtien et puis cliquez Done qui c'est fini. I will pass it on to Vietnamese.
Xin chào, good evening. Tên tôi là Linh và tôi sẽ là người thông dịch của quý vị bằng tiếng Việt hôm nay. Một khi chúng ta đã bật lên cái nút gọi là nút phiên dịch Interpretation thì quý vị xin bấm vào cái hình là cái người địa cầu và sau đó thì chọn vào cái language là Vietnamese và tiếng Việt để mà nghe. Nếu mà quý vị có điện thoại di động, smartphone thì quý vị bấm vào 3 cái chấm. Sau đó thì sẽ có cái gọi là language interpretation. Đó là thông dịch bằng ngôn ngữ và sau đó thì quý vị sẽ bấm Vietnamese, tiếng Việt và sau đó thì là done, là xong. Xin cảm ơn. Now I pass to Mandarin, please.
好，大家晚上好，下午好啊，我是李伟，然后呢，今天会成为你的这个普通话国语的同传啊，所以呢，到时候我们这个翻译开启之后呢，你如果是用电脑的话呢，你会看到有一个地球仪的标志啊，在这个 Zoom 的这个底部，你就点击，然后选择普通话，你就可以进到普通话翻译的这个频道里头，然后我会为您翻译。如果你是用这个智慧型手机的话呢，那您要点这个3个点，点了3个点之后呢，有一个叫做 Language Interpretation， 就是语言翻译这个选项，然后呢，你就点这个国语，就是普通话。然后呢，你就可以听到，你进到这个频道里头，就可以听到我的翻译。好，now pass to Cantonese。
大家好，我係 Anna， 我係嚟自活塞語言翻譯團隊。我哋今天晚上為你提供多種嘅唔同語言翻譯。如果你想聽到廣東話同步翻譯嘅時候咧，咁你見到熒光屏有個地球儀，咁你撳個地球儀揀 Cantonese， 咁你聽到廣東話同步翻譯㗎啦。如果你用手機嘅話咧，就會揀3個點點點，咁你撳落去就會聽到呢個功能㗎啦。多謝大家。I'll pass it back to Danielle.
Thank you. So interpreters, make sure your microphones are on and that we are not on mute. And we can go ahead and activate the language channels.
Thank you.
All right. Activated.
All right, very good. So let's get into this evening's agenda, which is first up, the discussion of a waiver from the recent DESE determination that we're to come back April 5th for kindergarten through 5th grade. So as you all know, we have asked our attorney, Howard Greenspan, as well as our superintendent, John O'Terry, to look into this. And tonight they are here to give us their thoughts, the pros and cons of asking for a waiver, and then we should act either way on whether or not we believe that is a good option for our community. So let's first hear from them and then we can start deliberating. Mr. Greenspan, and then over to the superintendent.
Thank you, Mayor. Members of the committee. I sent to the committee members today a memorandum regarding the regulations that were recommended by the Commissioner of Education and adopted by the Board of Education on March 5th, 2021. These regulations are passed on an emergency basis, which means they are effective now. Usually regulations that are promulgated by administrative agencies in the Commonwealth are subject to public comment and review. But because of the emergency authorization, these amendments are effective immediately. And what these amendments have done is basically required school districts in order to comply with time and learning requirements that are part of the regulations of the department to go to full-time in-person learning for K-5 schools effective April 5th, 2021, and middle schools April 28th, 2021. So that requires school districts to go in-person live instruction 5 days a week pursuant to these regulations. Just as a general rule, the department has the authority under the statutes passed by the legislature to promulgate rules and regulations which have the effect of law. The department has several regulations that bind school districts to act within those regulations, such as the amount of school days in a year, time and learning, licensure requirements. These are all regulations that have been promulgated by the department. The board did allow a waiver process for school districts on these April 5th and April 28th, 2021 requirements, but the board and the commissioner has stated that any school district has to show a compelling reason to request a waiver. So that's the first requirement, a compelling reason, such as the maintenance, the facilities, those types of issues that may or may not be in compliance with the safety regulations adopted by the board and various state and federal agencies. What's also important is that the waiver is not for the rest of the school year. It's going to be for a limited amount of time. So if the school district wanted to apply for this waiver, it's not, you cannot ask for a waiver through the end of the school year. It has to be limited in time. The waiver period is for elementary school waivers must be submitted by Monday, March 22nd by 5 p.m. and middle school requests should be submitted by Monday, April 12th, 2021 by 5 p.m. Districts may submit waivers for both elementary and middle school phases together by the elementary school deadline. The department intends to respond to requests on a rolling basis, and districts will be notified of a response within 5 business days of submitting the waiver request. So just to sum up, the district has to submit a compelling reason. The district has to identify the physical distance standard being used in terms of spacing of students to students. And the department has also relied on various scientific data, and their guidelines are 3 feet from desk to desk. So a lot of people are familiar with the 6-foot rule that was originally discussed when COVID began. But in terms of student to student, desk to desk, the department has advised that they are using a 3-foot standard. So if you had to request a waiver based on the facility and based on the number of students that are coming back to Malden, the department would analyze that request based on the facility on a 3-foot student to student distance. And it's clear that the department has not been encouraging the waiver process for the elementary and middle school levels. It seems that they are generally, they have made the decision by this rule that they want these students back full-time in person 5 days a week. They have not promulgated a rule as it relates to the high school at this point in time. But they have very clearly indicated that they want students back in the elementary and middle schools 5 days a week. And if the district does not comply with the time and learning requirements, the district would have to, at some point in time, provide a mechanism to ensure that your students are receiving those hours, whether it's during this school year by some other way, during the summer, or some other compensatory way in the fall. So they do have enforcement powers. There's also a potential for your Chapter 70 aid, which is tied to department rules and regulations to also be affected. So that is a brief summary of the department's position and the department's regulations on time and learning.
Thank you, Mr. Greenspan. Superintendent Oteri, your advice to the committee.
I think Attorney Greenspan really spelled this out in a very succinct way and a high level way as well. We looked at this at the administrative level, and we are not seeing a path that would lead to a successful waiver. As of today, we brought in our grades 3 and 4 students. So we are hybrid with our pre-K through 4. And in 2 weeks, we'll have our grades 5 and 8 students in. So we are in a hybrid mode with all of those grades that are required to be in. One of the ways in which the department said you could apply for a waiver if you were in a fully remote mode, have never had students in, that they would consider that. They would send support to assist you in getting students in a quick manner, but I think they're talking a very short turnaround time. I think we've been very successful with our grades in hybrid since February. We've had very low transmission, and we've been successful in getting our students in. I think our families have spoken in terms of their enrollment. Excuse me, we have 67% of our K-4 families in hybrid. Some are higher in some schools, but that's, I think, we have 2/3 of our families that have opted to come in hybrid. We suspect when the option or the mandate of all 5 days a week full time, that number would likely increase. As we have heard from families that a hybrid where the student is only in 2 days is not particularly helpful to them in their work schedules. So we would suspect that number would rise, would increase. The waivers, our neighboring communities who have been remote the entire year, Chelsea, Revere, and Everett are not. They're going straight. They're skipping the hybrid stage, although Chelsea will be putting in for a 5th grade waiver because of the configuration of their students. They have K-4s and a 5 through 8. The department acknowledged that there are some districts like that, and the waiver to get the 5th grade to be put in with the middle grades, the 6th, 7th, and 8th, is, I think it's considered almost pro forma at that point that they would grant that. But I think that we're in a position where we've been moving forward very well. And we feel confident that on April 5th, we can come back. The distance, I mean, part of that is we have had 6 feet. The department is now mandating 3 feet. We can't use 6 feet as a reason to request a waiver. We can get between 25 and 27 desks in a classroom, depending upon the size, with 3 feet spacing. So, like Mr. Greenspan, I don't see a path for a waiver that would be successful, that would potentially just grant us an additional week or two. That seems to be the tone and the direction that we're hearing from the department and also from Superintendent's Association as well.
All right, there you have it, members. Let's open it up for questions, queries, qualms, and concerns. Any of the members wish to speak? Let me just go to do you have a clarifying point, Mr. Greenspan?
I do, Mayor. Thank you. I just wanted to add one other thing for the community's awareness is that a family can opt to remain remote for the rest of the year. So I just wanted the community to have that information.
Yep, very good.
Thank you for that catch. Despite the fact, I think it bears repeating that the state is mandating a full reopening 5 days a week on April 5th. Families for this year only will have the option to remain in remote learning.
All right, once again, back to the members. Let's start off with Mr. Gray.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. After looking at Attorney Greenspan's note and analyzing it as best I could, in my opinion, even if we applied for a waiver and got it, I think it's a bad option for a lot of families in the district. Because even if we got a waiver, we would be forced to make up the time by over the summer. That would be an additional expense, or put in extra time somehow in the fall, which is still an additional expense. And if we ignore it, we potentially give up Chapter 70 money. I mean, this is a burdensome situation we're in. Like Attorney Greenspan, I don't see any good way out of this. That's just my opinion.
Okay. Mr. Gray, if I could, let me clarify with Mr. Greenspan. I believe if we're granted a waiver, it has no impact on student learning time. If we don't do anything and continue on without a waiver the way we are, then yes, we would be penalized greatly. Do I have that right, Mr. Green? Because I know it's confusing. I had to look into it multiple times myself, but is that it?
Yeah, the waiver would give us a relief for whatever the waiver period is from these requirements. You are absolutely correct, Mayor.
Okay. But Mr. Gray, if we decide just to thumb our nose at the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education without a waiver, yeah, then we could face major repercussions of doing that. So I saw another hand to the right, Ms. Luong.
I just have a quick question before I actually go into what my thoughts are. But the remote families do not have to make up time, correct? That is correct. They do not have to make up their time.
Yes.
Perfect. Yeah. And then does anybody know how many of our current teachers are currently vaccinated, at least with the first shot or both shots?
Superintendent?
Do we have that number?
We don't have that number. The union is surveying members at this point. I can tell you today, I had 150 staff members vaccinated. We were able to secure 150 vaccinations at Cambridge Health Alliance in Somerville through Chris Webb on Friday afternoon. We opened it up on a first come, first serve. And they originally thought 175, so there were 175 on the list. We did the first 150, and last night when I confirmed that, we had about 22 or 3 that were already vaccinated, which was a good sign. So everybody that was on the list was vaccinated today. So we have 150 more staff people who are vaccinated. We're hearing anecdotally a number of staff in the last week or two have at least received the first dose, or in some instances, the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. We're working very tightly with our Board of Health. Any opportunity that comes up for vaccination clinics, we're passing them along and slotting our staff into it.
I have an additional question. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Please.
So 2 more questions. One, do we have a plan, a guaranteed plan that prior to bringing all these students back, will all of our staff and teachers be vaccinated? Do we have that like as a guarantee?
I don't think there's any guarantee, particularly. I mean, I can tell you, I'm sure Mr. Webb has expressed this publicly. He had multiple times in the last month where he has thought he has had some dosages that he could set aside for educators, and the state has pulled the availability of the vaccine. It's very frustrating. There's no guarantee, but we're feeling optimistic. We know we have a number of staff who have secured vaccinations through the new online portals that the state rolled out in the last week, but we don't have a mass site or a plan that would guarantee at this point. I keep in touch with Mr. Webb multiple times a day, and we're always looking for it.
Okay, and then my last question, sorry, is you mentioned that we can fit 25 to 27 desks in a classroom. Do we know, with the 3-foot rule, do we know, are there any classrooms with more? I know the high school could potentially have more than 27 students in a, in a class. Do we know how many classrooms would be affected, or what were we going to do if we can't fit everything in a classroom? Do we have other options? What's the plan?
We know in our K-8 right now, we don't have any that exceed that. Part of it we won't know until we will have to resurvey our families with a binding choice, which we will get out in the next day or two. It's in the translator's hands right now, that we will send out in light of the mandate. And then we'll be able to ascertain how many families will be returning. We don't anticipate 100%, but we know in our K-8s, we don't have any classrooms that exceed 27.
So, but what if everybody does come back? That's what if everyone decides no one wants to be remote? Every single one of our students are coming back K through 8s. Can we socially distance them by 3 feet in everybody's classroom? So that's
in our K-8s, we can.
Okay.
In the high
what
school,
about the high school?
To see. And in the high school, I think an advantage that we have is we can move classrooms. Some of the classrooms in the high school are larger than others, particularly in the older wing, where there's not necessarily uniformity in those classrooms. There's a little bit of they have sort of nooks or alcoves that allow like a teacher's desk to be set further apart, and therefore the spacing can increase. But in some you fit less, and some you can fit more. But until we have the exact number of families that are coming back at the high school, we don't know, but we feel confident. We also, you do have to understand that our seniors will be leaving early, and not even sure necessarily that the seniors would be a part of the 5-day plan. We don't know yet. The state has not indicated when that will happen. They'll have a plan released in April, but how long that'll be, we're not sure. So we will continue to monitor that, but we also have the flexibility to switch rooms where summer classes are more under-enrolled. We could potentially look at that.
Great, thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Long. Other questions, queries, qualms? Mr. Weldy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. just a quick note. I just reached out and connected with Deb Gesualdo, our MEA president, who sent out that survey in conjunction with the mayor's office. And out of the 591 people, she said, responded to the survey so far out of about 950. She says that 239 staff members have had at least one dose of a vaccine. 134 of them have been fully vaccinated. 88 have an appointment, and 113 haven't been able to get an appointment based on the survey results so far. And thank you, Deb, for providing that data and for facilitating that survey. My initial comment, I'm trying to sort of remove the emotional piece, because I think this is like the fact that DESE overexerted their authority in this way in and of itself, I think is a travesty, right? This steps on local control in every fundamental way. This, after months of absent leadership, to come in like a sledgehammer like this just shows how arrogant and out of touch they are. But also the fact that they're playing with people's lives like this. And as usual, they make a declaration and now the rest of us have to sort of just do it and put the pieces together. But yeah, my gut says that I believe that we should be applying for a waiver just to show them that we don't believe that their authority should extend this way. But to Michelle's initial point, just the idea of fitting 27 desks in a room 3 feet apart to me sounds impossible. And I feel like that's something that we should not be saying that we're going to do. I don't know how we're going to fit. I mean, our rooms are not, we have a couple rooms that are weirdly shaped, but 27 desks 3 feet apart while also maintaining the distancing seems like a real risky play. I don't know. I'm uncomfortable with the situation as a whole. I know that we don't have a lot of control over that. I think it's also very clear it needs to be very clear, and Howard did a great job, I think, of explaining this, that to the people at home, that applying for these waivers, this isn't really a waiver. It's a faux waiver because we still have to identify the date that this was happening. So they really want communities to believe that they have some options, even though they don't. I don't like how this whole thing came down, and I just felt like it was worth saying that. And I'm very nervous about, the steps that we take moving forward.
All right, very good. Other questions, Ms. Spatafora?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I guess my question for you, Superintendent, is I can foresee K through 4 being in a classroom all day long, or even K through 5, but how would we work with our middle school levels when it comes to changing classrooms? So, I guess, and before I even go there, I just want to clarify, when we talk about 3 feet between desks, we're talking about 3 feet from center of desk to center of desk. So
edge of desk to edge of desk.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I thought it was center to center. I'm correct.
I think it's in the guidance of edge of seat to edge of seat.
Okay. So back to my question in regards to middle school, I'm not really touching upon high school yet, just because DESE hasn't even declared we need to bring high school back in. So I guess I'm more curious on the middle school level. Will they be staying in a classroom and having teachers rotate through so we can still reduce the amount of movement?
I think that's been the guidance all along, is to reduce as much movement as you possibly can. That would probably be the preferred way in which to service our middle grade students where they switch classes. That way they're not going to different desks into different rooms.
Okay. And then how about bathroom usage? So we bring back, let's say 65% of each school. Are we going to have bathroom monitors to make sure that, you have, 2 kids from 2nd grade and 3 kids from 4th grade, everybody's going to the bathroom at once? I'm just curious about the logistics. We're talking about in classroom and being able to space, but logistically moving throughout the building, how would that work with that level of that amount of students back in the school?
We have to be working on a plan with that, which we're looking at with our administrative team. Certainly, we would need, currently right now in hybrid, our bathrooms are cleaned multiple times during the day. We would envision that that would be increased. We would probably use more structured time in the bathroom as we do now, where a classroom, before or after lunch, but then limiting how many students would go in. But we will be looking and analyzing that over the next couple of weeks.
Okay. And then, you'd made a comment in regards to, getting the waiver could possibly just give us a couple weeks, but I don't know. In my mind, I'm thinking that couple weeks can be a huge help for us in regards to teachers getting vaccinated, because if teachers are just getting, say, their first shot next week, that second shot isn't even going to come until April 5th. So I think, just personally, even if we got a couple extra weeks under our belt with a waiver, it would allow more teachers to get that second shot, be fully vaccinated, because even after the second shot, it's like a certain amount of time before. I feel like it's I don't know, an injustice to the teachers to have them coming back in, April 5th, and they only have one shot. I mean, a couple weeks could really help us. So thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Drummy.
All right, thank you. Just to touch on something Mr. Weldy said, Superintendent. Kindergartens basically use tables. Will there be enough desks available if we have to go to the 3-foot rule? Or are you going to have to work it out where they're sitting at tables and just, how would that work with the kindergarten?
I'm sorry, I missed the very beginning. You froze on me.
We were talking about a 3-foot rule with the kindergarten, K through 3. They had to have the 3-foot distancing. Kindergarten uses tables. Do we have the desks to accommodate the kindergarten classes, or are we going to have to buy those?
We have
desks there.
Yeah, we have the desks.
You have desks there?
We have the material, correct.
And I was going to ask a follow-up to what Jen said, but I lost my train of thought. That's what you get for being old.
Yeah.
If I remember, I'll get back to you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And we have the desks at the kindergarten level. That's correct.
Mr. Weldy and Ms. Lewan.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Building off what Mr. Drummy and Ms. Spadafora just said, just because I want some clarification for myself. The 3 feet thing, I thought, like Jen thought, that it was center of desk to center of desk. So I just pulled up the plan and it says seat edge to seat edge. So does that literally mean the front of a kid's seat 3 feet away from the back of the next kid's seat?
Soup.
I think it's more on the side, the horizontal spacing for that, because there's a desk in between. I don't know on the.
I guess what I'm really getting at is I don't want people to think that there's this false sense of space, that all of a sudden we've got 3 whole feet in between one row and the next. If it's seat edge to seat edge, I mean, we're sardining people into rooms and pretending that it's okay. But if the DESI thing says seat edge to seat edge, that is very different, I think, than we've got 3 feet of distance in the rooms. And like in particular, I'm thinking about, we have a couple buildings, Salemwood in particular, right, where we have classes, 4th, 5th grade, 32 kids could be in a room. So if they all come back, I mean, I know they can't, but are we really going to make sure that we're really strictly adhering to this 3 feet thing? And I think it's important to gain clarity on what that 3 feet looks like. And to Jen's point, like pushing it back just to give us time to do it right seems like a better idea than doing it.
In terms of, in the K-8s, we do not have any classrooms that exceed 27. So we know that. In terms of the vertical spacing, I could probably maybe get clarification. DESI has set up a hotline on that. I certainly know that seat edge to seat edge on the horizontal sides, and that's pretty self-explanatory, where there's a desk in between. I would presume it's probably edge of the desk to the back of the seat for the person in front of you and behind you, but that's the way we would have presumed it. I think when we spaced it out, the 12-inch tiles, or the 3 tiles between each desk, And I'm not sure what your last question was. It was more the point on.
Should we move it? I think you're right. I think I would have assumed back of seat to front of desk too, but I think we're both coming at it from a more humane and morale standpoint than I think
can check on that. In terms of, I don't know if asking for a waiver for additional time to ensure vaccination of our staff would be considered a compelling argument in the state's mind, but because I think every district in the state is under the same constraints too.
Okay, Ms. Luong.
I just wanted to say, I agree with what Adam and Jen both stated. I just don't think, I can't see us safely doing this unless our staff and our teachers are vaccinated or come close to being vaccinated. Squishing all of those little bodies into these classrooms, I just think it's unsafe and it's just right. And I think we should be asking for a waiver. And if they deny it, then that's on them. That's on them, and then we'll have to make other decisions. But not applying for a waiver to me seems irresponsible.
I think, you see other members, if I might, just from the chair, I thought our fellow member from Ward 5 described it perfectly in Saturday's Boston Globe, which is, we're suffering from a case of whiplash. I wish, and I know it's not exact science, that, this had been done sooner rather than later. And when it wasn't, and I don't fault anybody for that because we're going through something that we've never gone through before. But when it didn't happen, we then took the steps to do something and make it happen here in Malden. And so I don't know why we wouldn't continue to do that going forward, or at least attempt to. So I know the question here tonight is, whether or not we should move to see whether or not we would be granted a waiver. The question I have for everyone is, how could we not? I mean, if you look at the guidance that was provided by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, which is roughly, if I'm not mistaken, 16 pages long, the one thing that jumped out to me is the shift to more in-person days in some cases, which I think will be many cases, will affect teacher-student assignments. And I think the one thing we have hope for throughout this is to try to keep that student-teacher relationship intact. And I think credit to everyone on this call and everyone in the district, we've been able to do that. For the guidance to say that this may be impacted by this decision, to me, says it all, that we should try to do something, to make sure that that does not happen. And right now we know it won't because of the work that you've all done on this call. And, to me, that's what really stood out to me when I went over this over the weekend. I mean, the other thing that jumped out at me as well, if you go under the implementation planning on the guidance, there are over 40 conditions to it. So think about that, over 40 conditions to making this work. And let's face it, we live in turbulent times. And I think it's hard to just get a handful of conditions down pat in these uncertain times, never mind over 40 of them. So, for instance, the 3 feet edict, a lot of things have to go right in order for that to play out the way that DESE is hoping it will. And, I'm not confident or sure that will happen. And one other thing that jumped out to me is if you go to the vote of the board, you would hope something like this would be a unanimous vote, and it wasn't. It was 6-3. They talk about in the guidance that, it is essential that students get back to in-person learning because of a host of reasons that I think we all know about and we all share concern about. But if that was the case, why continue to offer the option for remote learning? If they're saying that it is essential, it is pivotal that we do what they say, then why continue to offer people the opportunity to learn remotely? So my suggestion would be that we petition for the waiver. And I think we do so in a manner that has been proposed to me by parents who, as always, are our best resource, who suggested that, you know, why don't we ask for a waiver to get through April vacation, then start K-5 in person, 2 weeks from that, middle school, and then so on, 2 weeks from that, high school. That way, I'm pretty sure we will address Mr. Weldy, Ms. Luong's concern about the increasing vaccination of our staff. I mean, I forget the percentages, but I think it was around 22% had received one dose, and I think 12% had been fully vaccinated. So I think by asking for a couple of more weeks, we will be at a much higher percentage of our team being vaccinated. I think the other thing it will buttress up against is we don't know who is going to come back. You know, we don't know what kind of impact this will have, but we know what it is now by the plan that we have in place. So those are some of my thoughts. I guess the other question, technical question I would have for Mr. Greenspan, if we were to apply for a waiver and we were to be granted a waiver, and we find out by the time the waiver was granted that, you know, 80, 90% of our staff have been vaccinated, could you always not exercise the waiver? Or if you apply for the waiver and you're granted the waiver, that's it? Or is there still flexibility even if a waiver is granted?
I can't answer that question in certain, but I'm going to assume that if you're in compliance with the mandated time and learning, that you could waive the waiver, because you're going back to what the commissioner and the board has originally asked for. So I don't think you'd have any jeopardy with being in compliance, even if a waiver is granted.
Yeah. So we've come a long way, and I know things seem to be looking up, although, you know, our chief of staff here in the mayor's office, who monitor these numbers on a daily basis, just did see a little bit of a blip in the past couple of days. So again, I know it's not the end there all, but to me, after all the work that's been done in this community, I'm not talking about any others, and I respect everybody's, as Mr. Weldy pointed out, decisions they have to make. But for us, I just feel like, you know, we've come so far. I think most people have rallied around the plan that's in place. You know, why wouldn't we at least continue on with it, at least through April vacation? But I want to hear from other members. This is just my opinion. I've read and, you know, did a lot of research over the weekend on it, and I certainly value all your thoughts and ideas about it. Ms. Spatafora.
Thank you. So just one other thought that came to mind while I was sitting here listening to Mr. Chair. You know, we talked about desk space, we talked about, you know, movement throughout the school, but have we looked into as well our morning and afternoon dismissal? Because I know for one, BB does not have a large area. We line up in the courtyard. So I'm just trying to picture, even if we have a school that has approximately 850 students and half of those come back, maybe K through 4, approximately 250 to 300 kids. And this is all approximate off the top of my head. How do we maintain that level of distance out in schoolyards, just bringing all these kids back when it comes to morning lineup or dismissal? Because now we're not just adding students, but we're adding parents too that have to be there and stand with their second, you know, graders. And it just seems like a lot of people in a small spot, you know, to bring in.
Yeah, we'd be working on plans to, you know, have multiple places to line up and spread students out as best we can. You know, we got to look at what the numbers would be. but that would be something that we're going to have to analyze as well. I don't have the answer for that right away. We haven't gotten into that level of detail yet.
So I guess my question more for Mr. Greenspan would be, would that be a compelling case for us? Because we're not talking about classroom with just say 20 to 25 kids maybe. We're talking about a courtyard with not just 250 students lining up, but also parents, and then all the teachers that come out. That's a large amount of people in one space.
So I can also, just before Mr. Greenspan answers, sorry, that if we do put in for a waiver and it's around spacing and whatnot, they did say that they would dispatch a team that would come and analyze your spacing, because they apparently have plans and ways in which you can accommodate that is, you know, they said sort of out of the box thinking that they can encourage and apply, because they're looking at districts all across the state. So I guess that would be something, even if we apply for the waiver and they would didn't grant it, that would be a service that they would provide to us.
Mr. Greenspan?
Yeah, I'm not sure, because we're in uncharted territory, but I think it's certainly something we could put in the application as to one of our reasons and our concerns.
Okay, other members? I know one other, Mr. Greenspan, that was in the guidance was around operational constraints. I mean, the other thing we don't know is if we're not where we want to be in terms of vaccinations, we also would be faced with the staff that may not come back. So I think as these, you know, families pointed out to me, who I don't want to identify because I know people have different feelings about the issue, that also would be a problem for us, right? If all of a sudden leaves are put in, yet we're returning to in-person learning. So I think you would address that by asking, you know, let's try to get through April vacation, because based on the numbers that Ms. Jeswaldo presented, if you extrapolate those over the next couple of weeks, we should get to a better percentage there, which we hope would then lessen the need for our staff, you know, to need more time.
I agree. We'll put that in the application.
Mr. Waldeck.
I just want to say I support what you were just saying. I mean, I think that it's important. Like you said it best, right? At this point, it's worth, whether or not you agree with the issue, right? We know that this issue has a million different sides to it, and people feel very strongly about hybrid, not hybrid, full in, not full in, keeping their kids remote for the year. They feel it. They feel it strongly and deeply and personally. But regardless of what we feel of the issue, it's the very scary precedent setting that worries me the most about this. Like Howard was describing, this emergency nonsense, as if this right now is an emergency, and giving the commissioner this type of authority, to me, I mean, talk about being a dictator, shortened version of it. But the idea that, like, you know, what's going to come next, right? Like, we're going to be at a point where local control is just slowly being taken away. And if we don't even apply for the waiver to say, you know what, we don't agree with what you just did, I think that sends a bad message. I mean, we know that he enjoys power, and this is a power grab. And if we don't take a stand ever, when we have an opportunity to, then I think these things will keep going. And for the folks, and I had a conversation recently with someone who wants their kids back in full-time in person, and I respect it. And my argument back to them was, I don't agree with you on the issue, but to me, this isn't even about the issue. It's about the fact that eventually he's going to do something that you don't agree with, and you're going to be upset and want us to stand up to him. But it's just because you happen to agree with this issue. So if we don't take a stand at some point and say, you know what, you know, you're not doing what's best for the cities and towns, or the kids, or the adults, or anybody, then when are we gonna? So I wholeheartedly support your move to at least put in for it, Mr. Chair.
You know what else, Mr. Waldeck, too, that some families have said to our office is, if we were to go all the way, we haven't even started to address before and after school programming. So I know through our superintendent to our budget director, Tony Murch, she's starting to look into that, but we're not even, well, first of all, we can't do it the way we used to do it based on the guidance that is still currently in place. So trying to come up with a new plan to time up with what the state's asking us to do, I think that's also another compelling reason, Mr. Greenspan, that we may want to touch upon that, what do we do before and after school? I mean, our superintendent has indicated that's going to require, some time to figure that out. So anybody else, any other thoughts, queries? I know this is a tough one. I mean, again, we've never been through this, but, this guidance would have been I think this is something we were looking for, 8, 9, 10 months ago. And so when it wasn't there, and it's no fault to anyone because we've never gone through it before, we worked with, all the stakeholders to come up with what I think has been working pretty well, thanks to everybody in the district. I mean, I speak with the superintendent just about daily on transmission rates, and you all see the emails, and they haven't been what we thought they might be, based on people coming back, which is, again, credit to the district. And so I just don't know why we wouldn't want to continue that at least through April vacation, just to make sure that we all get to where we want to go. Ms. Luong? You're on, I think you're on, yeah.
Sorry. So the families that opt for remote, it's going to be just business as usual as it is now, Mr. Superintendent, meaning they're not going to go to a separate remote academy. They'll be zoomed into their prospective classroom. Is that correct? Is that how that'll work?
That's the plan.
I just wanted to clarify that. That's all. Thanks.
Ms. Spatafor.
So I guess the big question is, are you looking for a motion?
Yes, unless there are other thoughts about this. All right, hearing none.
I'd like to make a motion that we apply for the waiver to DESE to extend our hybrid time. I don't know how else to put it, but.
Yeah, I mean,
second.
I guess what we could do is, depending on the vote, two things. One is we could spell out right now what we'd wish our team to do, or we could have them develop a plan to come back for our consideration, in which we would have to have another special meeting. I mean, the plan that, seems to make sense. They're asking us to come back April 5th. Maybe we just try to extend it through April vacation. So we account for April vacation. There's a few observances coming up, and start in person after April vacation. And then 2 weeks, the next group, 2 weeks, which is one suggestion. Or again, you have the administration come up with a plan and come back to us, whatever your pleasure. Because you're going to have, Ms. Spatafor, we have to submit the timeline. They're not going to accept a waiver without it.
Yeah.
So that's the question. I don't know if we want to do that on the floor or ask our superintendent to work on it and come back to us, in which we would have to have a meeting to consider it.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can move to table, because again, it's not due until the 22nd. And according to the regulations, they will notify us within 5 business days, I believe it is, of their decision, or sooner, but no more than 5 business days. Mr. Greenspan?
I was just going to say the waiver for the elementary has to be submitted by a week from today. So I think your suggestion for the timeline to be decided upon now would probably be helpful.
Yeah, because I think, Ms. Spatafor, they said they would also take them early. So if you submitted it tomorrow, I think chances are they would get back to the district pretty quickly and not wait until after March 22nd, is the sense I got from reading the guidance.
Yeah, I think time is of the essence. And it just personally, I think it doesn't hurt us to at least apply for it. I'd rather, go for it all than not go at all. So.
All right, anybody else wishing to speak? All right, if not, Ms. Spatafora, one more time, so the members. So you don't think we need the administration to come back? You're prepared to make the motion with the timeline?
I think the administration is fully versed on providing the information needed for the waiver. I mean, we've discussed numerous topics here tonight that they can utilize when applying for the waiver. So yeah, I'd make a motion that administration go ahead and apply for the waiver based on all, everything we discussed this evening.
And you would have in-person learning return the Monday after April vacation? Because that's the question. Do we want to direct the superintendent as part of the waiver? Well, it has to be part of it, but do we want to tell him tonight the timeline we want in the waiver, or do we want him to go work on it with his team and come back to us? That's the question.
So I don't have our school calendar in front of me. So can someone direct me with the school vacation dates? Is it the 19th to the 23rd of April? So
yes.
We're asking for a return to school on April 26th for our elementary students.
Correct. Would be one option.
Would be, yeah.
And then 2 weeks after that would be middle school.
Yes. So personally, I thought at least giving us a couple extra weeks to at least make sure our teachers are getting those second doses, and 2 weeks would put us into April vacation. So it makes complete sense that the return to school would be the 26th of April.
So the hybrid model would continue as is. The phases would continue to roll in as we've worked on. It's just this new standard from the state would kick in the Monday after. So 5 days in person, K-5, Monday after April vacation. Then 2 weeks from that would be the middle school. And then 2 weeks from that, well, they haven't announced high school, but I assume it would be 2 weeks high school as well. Mr. Walde, does that make sense? I see you raising your hand.
That makes sense. I'm just thinking it through in my head.
Yeah, yeah. Anybody else wishing to comment? So we have a motion. Let's see if we can get it properly up before us. Is there a second to it? Seconded by Ms. Luong for purposes of further discussion. Any other questions, queries, qualms? Superintendent, anything on your end that you need as part of this from the committee?
You're asking for a 2-week extension. We're doing it based on several factors that you laid out here. We'll put that in the application.
Okay. Anybody else? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Drummy?
Yes.
Mr. Froyo?
Yes.
Mr. Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Ivina?
Yes.
Ms. Luong?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Ms. Spatafora?
Yes.
Mr. Walde?
Yes.
Mayor Christensen?
Yes. All right, so that carries unanimously. Superintendent, you'll keep us posted.
Will do.
All right, very good. All right, so our next order of business, Superintendent, we're going to let you, I don't know who else is with you from the team, but for our next order of business, we'll let you come off and come back. Are you back? Do we have executive session? Let me just, yeah, so Sue, we'll see you in executive session, okay?
I don't think that that's for me.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, no, right. Yeah, so John, Superintendent, can you let the team know that we should be good from here?
Well, they're on the call. I will.
Yeah, so we'll give a second for our team to come off the call. so we can take up the next order of business.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Welder, I think we're set, right? So the next order of business is the superintendent search process. So what's everyone's thoughts? We can deliberate for a little bit, talk about what you thought, your queries, qualms, and then we can take nominations.
You want to come out?
Why don't we do this first? I'm sorry, Mr. Dry. Let's have Ms. Weldy and Ms. Spatafora lead us off since they did the yeoman's work on this. Mr. Weldy or Ms. Spatafora?
Happy to defer, yeah.
Okay, it's up to you. I mean, so I guess I didn't really have much prepared other than really a huge thank you. So here we are with 3, I'm going to say extremely qualified finalists before us tonight. And that is because of the amazing search committee that we worked with. And they did exactly what we asked of them, and they made this decision extremely hard by putting forth the candidates that, in my eyes, and I'm not going to speak for the committee or Mr. Weldy, that truly, wanted to make Malden their home. So I don't know if you want to add any more to that, Mr. Weldy. I mean, I know I have, this entire process has been a struggle when you have so many amazing people before you, and not just our 3 finalists. It comes down to the full 37 that were presented to us. And while some might not have necessarily been a fit to Malden, in each and every regard, they're all amazing administrators. So, and I'm so thankful to be a part of this process. Because it was very eye-opening, and especially working with the community members. I think that was really the highlight, and having parents and teachers and students and just everybody having a say, everybody having a voice from every corner of Malden. So that I just wanted to say thank you for making this really difficult, but difficult in a good way.
Mr. Weldy?
I thank you, Mr. Chair. I would echo what Ms. Spatafora said. I think, the Collins Center delivered. They said they were going to make our job extremely difficult, and the fact that they managed to recruit so many candidates, that it was a wide variety of candidates. Ray Shirtliff and Ann Wilson really came through for us. I appreciate the chair's faith in putting Ms. Spatafora and I, giving us the opportunity to help facilitate this. I think Ms. Spatafora mentioned this, but we would thank the community for the amount of engagement that they put into this. The community as a whole, I mean, it was really great to see how many people care about the future of our system. We received a lot of emails, a lot of feedback. One email in particular last night we got, and I think we all got it, stood out, and without revealing who it was, and just the first piece of it said, thank you for putting together the best superintendent search I've seen. I really appreciated the amazing translation services. Credit to our interpreters. Family, community engagement, and the website. It's clear a tremendous amount of work went into and collaboration went into the search. And seeing how well you all handled it made me proud to be an MPS parent, which is like, okay, so we did something right as a school committee. So that's pretty cool. And I'll echo what Jen said, saying a thank you to our search committee folks. That was a lot of fun, and they were extremely dedicated, and each brought very different perspectives to the table, and were able to voice them, I think, when it mattered the most. I'm proud of the process. I'm proud of the people who participated, and I stand by the process. I mean, without saying too much, because the work that was done was in executive session, I can candidly say that out of the record number of applicants that we received, and the interviews that went by, my initial first choice was not someone I advocated strongly for, did not move out as a finalist. And I still think that the process was great. And I stand by all three of these candidates because Jen's right. They want to make Malden their home. They want to do what's right for us, for our students. We've received, this year has brought out the best and the worst in all of us. And we've received lots of positive emails. I've received some emails talking about how this whole thing was already a foregone conclusion, which I think comes from a place that couldn't be further from the truth, right? Because knowing that my first choice didn't even come out of committee, and I respect the work that our committee did, each of the members, all 9 of us, listened to all of the forums, listened to the interviews, really put a lot of thought into this and remembered that it's our collective stewardship of the school system, I think, that matters the most. Because it's not about any one group of stakeholders, parents, community members, administrators, teachers. It's all of us coming together to find common ground for what's good for our kids. So I can genuinely say I did not expect to be so conflicted, and I'm living in that irony that I'm complaining about the exact thing that was promised to us, which is a truly difficult decision. So thank you everybody for the amount of participation you put into this. It was, we're doing something for our kids.
All right, anybody else wishing to speak on the process? Mr. Gray.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a bit of a process question, and I've heard some conflicting things. This is probably a quick answer. When we vote, is it going to be the first candidate that receives 5 or more votes gains the position?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I need clarification, because I have not been through this process before.
No, understood. I've been through it, Mr. Gray, and I had to check again today on all the rules around parliamentary procedure, so don't feel like you're alone.
Okay, so whatever order we vote in, whoever gains 5 votes first wins the position regardless.
Yeah, and then it all comes down to the outcome of contract negotiations.
Got it. All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, very good. Anybody else? If not, we'll open it up for nominations. Mr. Iavino.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to put forward the name of Dr. Margaret Ferrick as superintendent, new superintendent, incoming superintendent of the Malden Public Schools.
All right, is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Drummy. Any other nominations? Ms. Spatafora.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to nominate Lahia Noriega Murphy for position of superintendent of schools for Malden.
Is there a second? Seconded by Ms. Luong. Any other nominations? Any other nominations? Chair has none, so we'll close that. Now let's talk. Let's have discussion. Any members? Mr. Iavino.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm putting forward Dr. Ferrick's name for consideration for this position because I think she's had experience in small school districts. Of course, she also worked in the Lowell School District. She has a demonstrated knowledge of budget. She was authentic in her answers. Her answers were focused. They were well-directed. They were on point. She has also expressed and focused on a driving of a strategic plan. And the strategic plan is necessary because it guides the decisions, guides all the decisions, or should guide all of the decisions that school committees make. In her interview, I think she focused on the fact that her job, the job of any superintendent, the most important aspect of the job is, of course, monitoring the teaching and the learning of her students, the students in the Malden Public Schools, and making sure that the families understand and work in partnership and are contacted as duality. There's a duality. There's a partnership with the families and the students. So I think Dr. Ferrick, she checks those boxes as far as I'm concerned.
All right, other members. Mr. Gray, and then we'll go to Ms. Spatafora.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I made it pretty much known and clear that I consider all three candidates very well qualified if they all made it out of committee and made it to this point. And I'm going to stick to what I've said before. I can go with either Dr. Ferrick or Ms. Noriega. I think either one's qualified, and I'll go with whichever the consensus is. I have no bias either way.
Okay, others, thank you. Ms. Spatafora.
Mr. Chair. So having the privilege, of sitting through multiple interviews from the very beginning, I think our finalists are all extremely capable of doing the job of superintendent, but I think the job is more than just what you've learned and what you've been taught. What stood out for me with Miss Noriega Murphy, we are in a district that we're looking for someone to be here for the long run. Miss Murphy has been in Boston Public Schools for 26 years. Some may look at that as saying she doesn't have experience. I look at that as saying that's dedication. She found a district that she loves, that she wants to be a part of, and she stuck with it. Now as she's looking to rise through the ranks, come up, out of that deputy superintendent position, she's looking at a district and only our district. She only applied to us. Nobody else could say that. She has experience with an urban district, a district that has many different nationalities, cultures, creeds, genders, one that mimics Malden very much so. So on top of having academic experience, I think she has what our community needs. She's very driven when it comes to communication. And I know that most of our parents have said that's what they're looking for. They're looking for somebody that they can communicate with, that's going to be open and transparent. So that is the reason why I've nominated her to be the next superintendent.
All right, very good. Anybody else? Ms. Luong.
Geez, Jen, you said everything I wanted to say and then some. So what I wanted to say is that everything Jen said, plus I wanted to add that I liked her innovative ideas. I love the fact that she talked about maybe possibly coming up with translation certifications for some of our students that are multilingual. I love the fact that she wants to get to know all the parents as much as she could. I liked her communication style, her openness. I love the fact she doesn't have a desk. All of that to me is fresh, it's new, it's innovative. And I think Malden's ready for it. I truly think Malden's ready for this. And Boston Public Schools mirrors Malden more than Southborough, which is a really tiny district, only a third of what our district is, and as well as Lowell, which is not like Malden at all. So I think she would be fantastic, and that's why I did the second nomination.
Very good. Mr. Weldy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I like Ms. Spatafora, I was fortunate to have the opportunity to sort of meet them early on. And then, like a lot of us, we went to the community forums, we saw their interviews. I wish that we could take both of these candidates and bring them into Malden. I think that it would both be an incredibly strong benefit. I mean, Dr. Margot Ferrick is an incredibly strong balance of understanding both how a school system works, but also how students need to be engaged in order for it to work for them. She sees the value in the operational aspects of the work, particularly in central office, while also understanding, I think, the day-to-day nuances, the issues of the building. In the same token, I think Lihia Noriega sees schools as the center of a community, and that came out, I think, pretty clearly, and understands the role that schools play in the community as a whole, while also having a strong instructional lens and data-focused lens to move us forward. I think her community forums in particular showcased the ability that she has to connect with parents, to connect with teachers, students. I appreciated like Michelle did, in particular in response to Mr. Froyo's question, that she had some innovative thoughts around like career technical education and not just the vocational piece, but the vocational piece for how it fits best in our community, which we know is important to us. I wrestle because I think that Dr. Ferrick would be a phenomenal superintendent. I think Lihia Noriega would be a phenomenal superintendent and a phenomenal community leader. And I think based on the feedback that we've received, which we got hundreds of pieces of feedback from staff, from administrative folks, from students, from community members. It was very clear that there was some kind of a special connection that was made between Lihia and the community members. And although there's definitely some areas of growth, right? No superintendent has no areas of growth. I think she'll need our support, and she'll need to, be shepherded in with our admin team and to build those relationships. But I think it's unmistakable that there was some kind of a connection there made with our community. And I think I would regret passing that opportunity up.
Very good. Anybody else? Mr. Iavino.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree that there was a widespread support for Dr. Noriega. And it was within the community, it was from some staff. And it's important that everybody is heard and everybody is heard equally. However, I think there are times when the weight of what people have to say is not in equal proportion. What I mean to say is that if you look at the breakdown from the administrative forum, they were very, very positive. Our administrators, our directors, our department heads, directors, curriculum coordinators. These are the people who are closest to the curriculum, which of course is the heart and soul of any school system. These are the people who watch what goes on every day. They're responsible for evaluating staff. This is where the rubber meets the road. And our administrative staff was very, very complimentary about Dr. Ferrick and would be welcoming her as a superintendent. That was not the case with the other two candidates. So I look at that and I say I have to give a little bit more weight to what our administrators say, because this is where these are the folks who run the school system. These are the people that we hire to do that. These are the cabinet level positions. Thank you.
Let me ask the members, do you think, based on everybody's point of view here tonight, that we should invite these two back in, or are you prepared to vote this evening? Because I think you're all raising good points. So I didn't know if anybody thinks we need to have them back in for one more look before casting a final vote. Mr. McCarthy, and then Ms. Luong.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a clarification on what you just said, Mayor. What would be the timeline and time frame for regarding two interviews to have them back in?
There would be days. It would be as quick as humanly possible.
So it would be on a Monday, Tuesday type of thing, or?
Yeah, if not sooner. I have to figure out how that all works, with posting and all that. But yeah, it would be quick. But would give us an extended look at both of these finalists. And again, we don't have to do that. We could do what we intended on coming here tonight, but based on the differing opinions I'm hearing from the members, I wanted to make sure that that is an opportunity for us all if you thought it was warranted.
Well, yeah, I know that Ray Shirtliff is on the call right now. I don't know if he's ever experienced something like that, having him back in. So I don't know if we may want to have him in the call to, give him sort of a time.
Yeah, we have Mr. Greenspan here. I don't know if Mr. Weldy and Ms. Spatafor, I think we need Mr. Shirley, but Mr. Greenspan, that's happened before, I believe, right?
Yeah, I think it's up to the committee.
Yeah, it's up to the committee. I mean, if you think you have what you need, then we don't, but based on what I'm hearing here tonight, you may want to consider that.
Well, I'm just saying on the aspect of, I know there's been other searches around in cities and towns around us, right? That,
yep.
Have had multiple interviews regarding finalists,
mm-hmm.
right?
Yep.
And I mean, it's not a clean cut deal after just one final interview.
Yep.
It's very intriguing. I'm going to be honest with you.
Yeah, and I think from my vantage point in talking with, Mr. Weldy and others, is that, if you look at, the information that this was really well done. There are a lot of things in here that, we may want to digest and probe a little bit further on. It's like Mr. Greenspan said, just a judgment call from the committee. If the committee feels comfortable, we can move it tonight and be done. Or, if you think it's worth it, we could have him back in. Mr. Iavino? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that that's an excellent suggestion. If we've got two great candidates, let's have another look at them. This is a job that's going to be filled for the next 3, 4, or 5 years. It's the most important, one of the most important jobs in this. From our perspective, it's the most important job. There's going to be direction that's going to emanate from that office to the school system, to the administrative staff, to the kids, to the families. I think another look-see I'm all for it. Anybody else? Ms. Luong?
I actually don't think we need another look-see. I think that we have community forums that have been recorded. We have feedback from the community. I received countless emails, I'm sure everybody else has, on what my voters want. So, I mean, I can look to what the administrators want, but I also have to look what the parents have come back to me and what their feedback is and what the community has come back with. And I think that we can all go back through the tapes, the recordings of all these interviews. I think we have enough information. For me, I have enough information to make that decision.
Okay.
That's just my call personally.
Yep.
That's it.
All right, very good. Anybody else? Mr. Gray and then Mr. Weldy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have to agree with member Michelle Luong. I don't think I would get anything new or different out of additional interviews. Everything's been recorded. We have all the papers. We have all the resumes. We have all the testimonies from the parents, the children. This process is a little too removed. Okay. Another interview isn't going to get us to know these people better at this point. Because this is an interview process, they're just going to answer interview questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, very good. Good point. Mr. Weldy, was it you? Mr. Weldy, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I agree. I understand the benefit of it. I think any chance to hear more from these folks is a good opportunity. I think, we also had them in front of us and had an opportunity to ask as many follow-up questions as we wanted. And I think, some of us took advantage of that. And there's also been the community forums, and all of this is recorded. Just for argument's sake, Ray, our consultant, just chimed in and said he's not aware of any super searches that go to a second finalist interview round, just when we've done so many recorded forums to begin with. But I wanted to say, to Mr. Iavino's point, You know, that is the point. The point that Lenny raised is the point that weighs on my shoulders. That's the only real point that I think weighs on my shoulders, and it's hard because, you know, Lenny was one, I am one. Like we sit in those seats too. That is the one stakeholder group that I think gave us the feedback that made us stop and question, like, is this the right move? Are we making the right choice? But you know, I think that at the end of the day, I want to hope that is also the one stakeholder group that will rally and do the work necessary to build the relationship. And I'm not discounting the feedback that we got, because the feedback that we got was real, right? And it mattered. And I know exactly how I felt going through a superintendent search in my district as an administrator too, and meeting the candidates and not knowing what you're going to get, because you never know what you're going to get. No one would have expected anything out of what we've already got based on interviews. But I think I take a little solace in the fact that I think of all of the groups of people to know we have to put in the time and provide the opportunity to build those relationships. We have a phenomenal administrative team, some really dedicated people, some of which were a part of the search, some of which, you know, have been here and giving their all to our district for a long time. I have faith in the fact that they will, you know, continue to do all the great work they're doing for our kids. And I think that's the piece of the stewardship for me, that it doesn't matter who's in that chair. It doesn't matter who's in any of our chairs. We're all replaceable, but we do what we do because we care about the kids and we care about the system. And so I want to validate the point that Lenny made, because that's what was weighing on my shoulders too.
Okay, very good. Anybody else wishing to speak? Mr. Drummy?
I agree that what we've seen, I've sort of made a decision, and I don't think really having another interview is going to change it enough. I think the information is there. We've all seen it. Like we've said, we've seen the surveys, we've talked to them, we've heard them. I think we should be able to make a decision and really shouldn't have to extend it any longer than we already have. I think if we can tonight, I'd like to see it tonight.
All right.
Thank you.
Very
Mr.
good.
Chairman.
Very good. All right. So I think we've heard from most on that issue. So now back to the nominations at hand. Is there anybody else wishing to speak on the nominations? Let me just say from my vantage point, once again, I want to reiterate my gratitude to Mr. Weldy and Ms. Spatafora for truly one of the best searches I've seen in my time. And I know that wouldn't be the case if it wasn't for you two leading it. So on behalf of the committee, hats off to you. And I think the reason why I was throwing out having a second interview is because I've been completely torn on the candidates you put forward. As most of you know, I was here all weekend looking at all the video clips from the community forums, reading over the information that we got back. And I think for me, as you probably know, I spend most of my time in meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting. And I think the one thing that I've heard, you know, over and over is the need for us to not only have a qualified superintendent, someone that can do the job, which I think we all agree these candidates can, but that one other issue that separates them. And I think for me, it's around the advancement of equity and inclusion. You know, so that's something that in all the meetings I'm in today, you know, this issue is paramount. And for example, we meet monthly with the Malden High School students for racial equity. There are a group of teachers who have taken it upon themselves to see what they can do to help this most important cause. And, you know, we have a chance here to walk the walk. And so, you know, I think with choosing tonight, you know, my candidate would be Lahia Noriega Murphy. And so again, it wasn't without consternation. If you could have seen my desk in everything I had out yesterday, you would understand just how challenging a decision this was. But, I think for me, that's what helped me come to my ultimate conclusion is that, I think this person will be able to help us more, on this most critical issue, in addition to everything that's involved with serving as the leader of the district. So with that being said, let's have our clerk call the roll. Yeah.
So we are going to the first nomination.
Yes.
A motion by Mr.
Mr. Greenspan, 1 second, Madam Clerk. Mr. Greenspan? The nominations are in. We just go person to person, right?
Right, for the candidate that everybody.
They choose.
Right.
Okay. Mr. Drummy,
Dr. Farrick.
Mr. Froyo,
Good Farrick.
Mr. Gray,
Noriega.
Mr. Iovino,
Dr. Farrick.
Ms. Luong,
Noriega Murphy.
Mr. McCarthy,
Dr. Farrick.
Ms. Pedafora,
Miss Noriega Murphy.
Mr. Waldeck,
Noriega Murphy.
Mayor Christensen.
Lahia Noriega Murphy. Madam Clerk, 5-4.
Yes.
Okay. Let's now entertain a motion to go into executive session for the purposes of contractual negotiations with the superintendent of schools. Mr. McCarthy, seconded by Mr. Drummy. Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Drummy,
Yes.
Mr. Froyo,
Yes.
Mr. Gray,
Yes.
Mr. Iovino,
Yes.
Ms. Luong,
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy,
Yes.
Ms. Pedafora,
Yes.
Mr. Waldeck,
Yes.
Mayor Christensen.
Yes. Mr. Waldeck, leave. Another link for executive. We'll come back out.
Mr. Chair, Jen's been.
Oh, Ms. Pettifor?
I'm so sorry. I'm a little confused because I didn't get an exec session link. So.
Okay, we'll get you that right after. All right.
You are included, Jen. We want you there.
All right, see you in a minute.
I want to go eat birthday cake.
Looking forward to you.
Okay, Mr. Froyo's on. We'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion by the birthday person and seconded by Mr. Iavino. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. School committee is hereby adjourned.
Happy birthday, Jen.
Thank you.
Thank
Happy
you.
birthday,
Good night,
Jen.
guys.
Enjoy your night.
Thank you. Have a good night.